Blizzard just called you stupid without actually calling you stupid. What we're going to do today is go over the developers Campfire chat. I shouldn't say developers. There were quite a few roles in this live stream they had where they were communicating with players based on the backlash from the patch, everything that happened before the season launch. So we're going to talk about that, and some of the stuff they said is pretty crazy, so let's dive straight into it. What up team, it's MurderInc here. Like we said, we're talking about the Campfire chat. There's been tons of pages like what you see on the screen here of like a TLDR, too long didn't read, version of the notes. Now, one thing that a lot of the notes are missing, I guess we'll get to that. So they opened it up because they had to, because people were going crazy. I personally didn't care because I've been playing Season 1 as Barbarian, which is, along with Sword, considered one of the worst, and I've been having a great time, so I don't know. I just thought it was useless negativity to kind of harp on that. So basically what they did was, the first thing they did when they started the stream was they said, we messed up, we're sorry, and we're never going to do it again. And a lot of these TLDR things talked about that. This one didn't, which is the first one. So I'm glad I got to this one first. So they said they're not walking back the nerfs from the most recent patch. They were never going to. If they walk it back, it looks bad. Worse. If you can imagine how it would look worse. It looks bad for the player base and for investors, shareholders, all of that. You never want to walk something back. So there's a lot going on here. And the really important thing is going to be, they talked about how they wanted to tune down content because they didn't really want Nightmare Dungeons to be this hard. And I'm skipping around throughout the hour and 38 minutes of their whole stream they did, but there's so much conflicting information here. So first of all, they were asked, why aren't you nerfing some of the overpowered classes in the game right now? They say they don't want to nerf something without an answer. What do they mean by that? They said they don't want to nerf something and make it not viable because it's too strong if they don't have a way to make it relevant because of the nerf, which I get what they're saying. It's a smart approach, but it just doesn't align with what they've done so far. With some classes that weren't overperforming, there are a few Barbarian builds that cover this, but many builds have been nerfed and there was nothing to do because they just were crazy weak and the meta moved on to another build. So if they really believe that, that would be the smart thing to go. However, the entire patch conflicts with that whole ideology that they said is why they're not nerfing the most overpowered classes builds. They nerfed everything in the game because they wanted to balance vulnerable damage, crit damage, and they did that and they didn't nerf the content. They did after this live stream. If you want to say this is all a publicity thing, you're crazy. I saw a few people say that, and like, there's no way they did this on purpose. So the thing is, how can you preach this as your philosophy with class design from day one and then release a patch like this? It just doesn't make sense, and it really insults the intelligence of the player base because honestly, they should have just said, we messed up. We didn't think the nerfs would have been as large as they ended up because we don't understand vulnerable and crit damage and how it scales with the game properly. That's what they should have said, because that's what they did. They tried to make it not as big of a deal, but what they did is they increase the value of those two stats by lowering the amount you could get from gear because they're so much better than the others. So that was the first thing, and I really wanted this dev talk to be good, but that was kind of the first thing where I said they got to figure out what they're doing and prep much better for something like this. I get it, there was rioting, everything was burning, but you got to be more prepared, especially for a dev talk that's this significant. The next thing is going to be, they just let the player base know. Now, I'm not going to blame the people that spoke in this dev stream because it's likely it didn't have a ton to do with these guys. They're probably like the face because they can take it and someone had to talk about it, but I don't really think it's their fault. I think it's becoming increasingly clear to pretty much everybody that the game wasn't ready to be released, and they released it anyways. So let's talk about the next thing that was kind of insulting to the entire player base. They said, and it's somewhere on here, where they never planned to have Nightmare Dungeons, specifically Nightmare 100, as the end game content. That goal, that chase goal for really difficult content, because Tier 100 was way harder than Uber-Lilith. I mean, if you've done them both, you know this. There are certain maps you can do, and then that's it. You can't do every single map in Tier 100, and they're very hard to do it on a lot of builds that weren't completely busted and overpowered. And that was really good for the game, because there wasn't a lot to, I mean, I don't have to preach to anybody. There isn't a lot to do. There still isn't for the end game. But Nightmare Dungeon 100s, that was something to do, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I know many players enjoyed it, but they said, hold up, that was never our intention. Except it was. Because if they didn't have that, the game would have been, like, people think it's bad with no endgame content now. If tier 70 difficulty was the 100 from launch, people would have stopped playing after 5 days, and people did stop playing after 5 days. So just imagine how bad that would have been for the end game. It would be hit level 100, which there was no need to, or even clear everything at level 90, and then hit 100, beat Uber-Lilith, then stop playing, play another class. Instead, there was a reason to keep grinding and grinding, getting the best gear possible to be able to clear a tier 100 Nightmare Dungeon, because it was very difficult. It really was. It wasn't something like Uber-Lilith that you could practice, whether you're softcore, you just die in practice, hardcore, you have the scroll and the elixir to practice. You can't do that in Nightmare Dungeons. You get, what, 4 deaths? And then if you run out of the 4 deaths, you lose the sigil, and it was a pain to have to keep crafting the sigil. So for them to say they never intended it to be that hard, yeah, they did. I'm not buying it. Maybe someone can argue and say, you believe them, but I don't at all. I think it was a smart move to release it how they released it, and they should have kept it that hard. So this whole switch up saying we made it equivalent to tier 70 just seems like they were putting a band-aid and trying to cover their tracks, saying this was the plan the whole time to make people not feel as bad that some classes could do 100 and some couldn't. What they're doing is they're making the visible power creep not as visible. And I think that's a big point here, because if everything's tuned to tier 70, even the worst classes in the game can clear tier 70 with no issue. Like, no issue at all. So that change alone is really going to help the optics of players, saying, oh, we can all do tier 100 now. So yes, maybe I'm weaker and not critting. I'm critting for 1/4 or 1/5 of what other classes are, but we're still doing a number 100. So it's that mental, I guess, thing they're trying to push onto players, saying it'll be fine, and like, here's the band-aid for now, which I wasn't a huge fan of. I think they should have just owned their mistake and released balancing better and quicker. But again, I'm pretty sure it's obvious by now that, even though this is my opinion, that the game was not ready to be released. And I'm not going to speculate on why they released it early, but it's clear. Another reason on how you can know it's clear is because the changes they're talking about adding to the game are amazing. First of all, I don't think anyone wanted to see leaderboards on the first 100 or the first 100 Nightmare Dungeon. I mean, first level 100. That would have been pretty boring for leaderboards, but they specifically said, and it's going to be in here somewhere, that, all right, pretty much what they said is they're going to add content that's going to be tied into the leaderboards. I'm sure while scrolling through here, someone's going to see it, so I'll kind of just leave it here for now. So what they're going to do is they're going to add new content that's going to be specifically for the leaderboard and for the people trying to push the top whatever. So in my mind, I didn't play a lot of Diablo 3, but I mean, this is kind of my first real Diablo game, but from what I know, Nightmare Dungeons are supposed to be the Nephilim Rifts, and they're releasing some type of greater rift. And the people who hit the greater rift level, I think was 150 in Diablo 3, they're going to be adding something like that to the game, and that's going to be the new leaderboard. I think that's a reasonable and smart change for sure. Now, why isn't it here with the launch of the game? Why don't they just take longer? I don't get it. They're stringing people along, and I said this already before. I don't understand why seasonal games don't launch their game with Season 1. I'll never understand it. If you're a Diablo player, Path of Exile player, Grim Dawn, any seasonal game, let me know in the comments why games don't release on season 1. What are they afraid of? I don't get it. Maybe it's just me not knowing how seasonal games work. I mean, I do know how they work. I played Path of Exile, but I don't understand why they wouldn't launch a game with season 1, even if the leaderboards aren't active. It just makes no sense to me. Why would you want to play a base game of a seasonal game? Because it's always going to be the worst version no matter how you look at it. People can say, oh, they want to give people something to do, the Eternal Realm, all this good stuff. In my opinion, saying they're going to tune things for the Eternal Realm and it's going to be fun to play the Eternal Realm is a bait. And if you don't know that, you probably haven't played seasonal games. This is just something I've read and listened to from, I guess, seasoned and veteran seasonal gamers. They've never really looked at the standard or Eternal, as it's called in Diablo, those versions of the game in any seasonal game. It's always been focused heavily on seasons, and they made sure Eternal and Standard was fun. So that's like the biggest question mark for me, why they wouldn't have released this early, and why are so many of the great changes to Diablo not in some type of roadmap, letting players know, okay, this is coming, that's coming. Why did we need this dumpster fire of a patch for them to say, hey guys, all of this stuff's coming, and it was really good stuff? Why didn't they say that day 1? I said day 1 from the start, just as like what I thought was going to happen, which turned out to be right, that we don't have all the content. People said, oh, that's copium, everything you see, here's what we're going to get. I was like, there's no way. There's just not enough in the game right now. So with that being said, they're saying things like we're looking into, when they were talking about adding right here, looking at more milestone content for World Tier 2, Season 2 probably. You think they don't have this stuff ready? Like, why are they using this, I don't know, this mood and way of speaking, looking at more milestone content? They know about this. They knew about this prior to the game launching. The rush of the beta where you were locked at level 20, early access, they knew all about this. If you think so, you're just insulting every single player. You know they have all of this stuff ready, and like I said, I don't know what happened with the company. Maybe they had to push to do something. I don't know, I'm not going to speculate. I don't know enough about it, but to think they don't know of all the issues of the game, and they don't have answers to them, and they're just buying time until they can implement it into the game, is impossible for me to understand, and it's hard for me to believe that players don't understand that as well. Because some of the things they were talking about, like maybe reusing campaign bosses for some fights, if you watched the live dev talk, you saw when that question was read, how excited the guy was to answer it, and then he just toned it down and said, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll probably look into that and see something like that in the future. And then he kind of said that they've already been thinking about things like this. Bruh. They have this already. They know it's a good idea. They've probably seen other games do this, and it was always a plan. I don't really understand the whole withholding information and not just giving everyone a roadmap, because even if they can't deliver, it's at least something to get hyped about. So if they have to pull back last minute and say, guys, we have to delay this by a month, who cares? Get it in front of people so they have a reason to stay in the game, because if you lose people from Diablo 4, they're probably not going to be checking the news every single week, month to see when it's good again. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it's just usually if one game fails, someone just moves on to another game, possibly gets hooked onto that game, and they're not looking back. So first impressions are everything with this game, which is why, again, I don't understand why they didn't just start off with Season 1 and made it 3-4 months and just released patches as they went forward. I don't know. Maybe it's, again, a marketing thing where they wanted to market the game and then market Season of the Malignant, which obviously was a massive, well, I can't say a massive fail. We don't have the numbers yet, but based on the patch, people hated it, and they had to do a dev stream to kind of communicate about this. So I would say it was a pretty big fail so far. So this is pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Yes, this is a rant video, and I did say whining was cringe when I went over the patch. I still agree with that. I think whining is never the solution. I think coming up with a discussion, a logical discussion, talking about things, not saying, oh my god, the game's dead, what are we going to do? New game, and then spending all of your effort into trash talking the game on every single game forum, that's not the way to go. You can say, but they listened. They would have listened anyway if you said, hey, this patch is terrible. But when I see people coming in and like, so Barbarians had it pretty rough. They had it pretty rough. Easy answer, get good. I mean, you can still clear a lot of the stuff, but Barbarians had it pretty rough. But when I saw people going into the Barbarian section of the Discord saying, your class is dead, pick something else, who is that helping? Right? The answer is nobody. So that's never the way to approach things. And that's pretty much why I was in such a aggressive mood when I made that patch video, because I just kept seeing people who were excited to play Barbarian in Season 1 get talked down to by people who were playing Barb or who weren't playing Barb, saying, your class is dead, don't even bother playing it, even though you enjoy it. It's not going to work, it's not for you, you're not even going to be able to get past level 50, and it's just like, bruh, don't do that. So those are the people that I was directing all of that. Anyways, to sum this up, what they said was good. I think they're heading in the right direction. I always thought they were heading in the right direction, but there's so much cloak and dagger that I've seen here when they need to release a roadmap. I'm going to say it now, and I'll probably say it again. They need to make some type of roadmap to make things better. And if you didn't read it, you can just search TLDR Campfire Chat dev stream, and you will see a ton of sites, whether it's on the forums. I know Reddit has one. Reddit had some hot takes on it that they added themselves, which I don't think you should do when you're covering what someone said, but it is what it is. That's Reddit for you. So that's going to conclude this video. Just wanted to talk about it. Had to get it out there because I don't see any talk about this stuff. Yes, there's Uber Uniques, leaderboards. We all know what's good here. So you can read through this. I'm not trying to discuss any of that stuff because it's kind of irrelevant. I think the majority of the player base just wants to play the game and have fun. And right now, the fun factor is definitely at an all-time low, even though we got the worst version of the game already. So it is what it is. But I'm still having fun in the season. I look forward to testing out the new gems, seeing what I can do with them. Malignant Hearts is the right word, not gems. So we'll see how it goes. As always, if you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe with the notification bell. See you all in the next video.